Folks, are you ready to feel more confident in your decisions on the ranch? The answer might just be getting the right cattle scale for you. Hey, I'm Shaye Warner, and you are listening to the Casual Cattle Conversations podcast. Today we are visiting with Dawn Anderson about the variety of ways that cattle scales are advantageous to ranchers and the different kinds of scales that there are so that you as a rancher can find which option is going to work best for you. Dawn is joining us from the CattleScales team, but ultimately she's a rancher just like you and I, and she's going to be sharing a lot about her personal experience with weighing cattle from growing up on the ranch to the system her family uses today. With that, let's visit with Dawn, but always remember to check us out on YouTube too. Dawn, thank you for joining me today. This is not a completely new topic to the show, but it's one that we maybe haven't talked about in quite a few years. And so for those listening, we're going to talk about cattle scales and the importance of being able to weigh cattle and how that impacts ranches. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you for the invite.
So to kick off, when we're looking at the big picture, why is it so important for ranchers to be able to know what their cattle weigh?
Well, I think that the biggest thing is that you can't manage what you don't measure. Most ranchers are making decisions without one of the most valuable pieces of data on their operation, which is actual weights. I think the person that is best at guessing the weight of their cattle are the people that weigh their cattle.
Absolutely. You have to be able to know what enough of them weighed to look at them and be able to size them up. But even then, you can still be off by 100 pounds, 200 pounds. I mean, it all depends on the animal.
Exactly.
So, Dawn, tell us a little bit about your background as a rancher.
So, my husband and I live on the family-owned and operated ranch. We are JBB AL Herefords. My mom and dad started the operation in 1967. They had commercial cattle prior to going into the seed stock realm. My dad bought my mom 2 horned Hereford heifers as an anniversary gift, and that's where our Hereford started. Since then, we've added, we're polled and horned. We mixed the genetics, and then in 2012, we added Red Angus. We are partners with my mom. My dad passed away in 2013, but we're partners with my mother and my son Brian and his wife Charlie. Everybody is here actually all of us are within a half-mile radius on the farm and ranch. My daughter and her son also live here on the ranch and have cattle. Our operation is approximately 135 mama cows. That includes my daughter-in-law came with a group of commercial cows. We also have some commercial cows that we primarily use as embryo recips, mostly red Bali recips on that end. We sell primarily yearling Hereford and Red Angus heifers as well as bulls. We farm as well, and so we row crop silage corn, grain corn, alfalfa, occasionally some grains, whether it be, registered or seed grains. And we background our own cattle. We have a feedlot here, and we also, anything that does not meet our standards for a breeding animal goes into the fat pen. And so we do a number of blocker beefs. We have for several years, have some great customers. And then we also ended up feeding out cattle for the meat processing place that processes our cattle. So that's basically the background of me and our operation.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Like a lot of us, you probably stay plenty busy with all of that.
Yeah. On top of that, my husband is a sales rep for a couple of the semen studs, and so we do custom AI, we do custom farm work. So yeah, I've been with CattleScales.com and CattleMax for 5 years, a little over 5 years. So we just can't find enough to do.
So if you're listening on YouTube, you can tell that Dawn's a Hereford gal because she's got these nice Hereford curtains in the background. There's some pictures behind her too. And Dawn, I'll say I'm happy to hear you're using Red Angus. They're my favorite. So
yes, my Red Angus curtains are over here. So you just see the Herefords in the back, and the Red Angus are over here.
Awesome. So Dawn, are you using a cattle scale on your own operation then?
Absolutely. I guess early on, my dad understood that pounds matter. It doesn't matter whether you're raising commercial cattle or seed stock. I mean, it doesn't matter. Pounds matter. And of course, we tried some, the tape measurement to guess weight on calves and stuff like that. We went through all of that. And so I don't remember us ever not having some type of scale. We had an old beam scale that we would run cattle across every once in a while. It wasn't real handy. So, we definitely only used it in those prime times of weaning and yearling. And the same with weighing calves. I mean, for several years, we used one of the hanging hay scales and had it set on a bipod, and you hobble the calf, and we knew it was important, but as far as accuracy, we hadn't got there. And I mean, it was probably late 90s. My dad went to a set of load bars under a chute, and I mean, that makes you a believer. It's worth it. You don't have to weigh those cattle every time they go across, whenever you're working them or whatever, but it definitely gives you that opportunity to get a weight on them. We're in the Northwest. We calve in January, so everything goes through the barn for at least 12 hours. And so we get that opportunity to weigh those calves on a set of load bars, but we have it on I'll call it a trolley, so it can move up and down the barn. So we get those, again, a little more accurate than the hanging scale of those calves bouncing and going, okay, it's somewhere here in the middle. And then we're able to track those on up, those birth weights on up through weaning and yearling. Again, we upgraded chutes and load bars or load cells under our chute in around 2015, and have a scale head that monitors that weight and gives us a little chute-side information. So able to use those weights on a regular basis and know what's going on with the herd.
Yeah. So this might be a little bit of a side tangent, but did you ever compare the hoof tape on the calves to their actual weight?
I'm sure that Dad did. I mean, that was many years ago, and I don't remember exactly, but I do think that when we went to the next step of weighing, I think it was like, yeah, no, this is definitely a better, more accurate depiction of what those calf weights are.
I would agree. I know my parents tested it. They had an intern who was like, well, why don't we do this? It's supposed to be accurate. So they compared it, and it was close, but it was different enough where it was like a weight should be a weight. And that's always been my mentality too. So you've talked about kind of the gamut of ways to weigh cattle and how it's progressed on your operation throughout the years. And I was, internally kind of chuckling when you were talking about the scale where it bounces up and down, because I remember using that to weigh calves before my parents got more of like a digital game scale that's, a little more accurate in that sense. But I kind of want to talk about some more bigger picture things for your family's operation and what really started to change once you got an accurate weighing system on your ranch.
I think becoming more confident in decisions, like, we'll just talk about calf weight. In the seed stock operation, you're only as good as your data, and making sure that when you have you say a calf weighs 80 pounds, that is an accurate weight. So from that, and tracking bulls 50%, cows 50%, you can only do so much with the bull, but yet we AI everything. And so we try to match those AI sires to get the best performance out of that cow. And to know that, okay, we've used, this is this cow's 5th calf, and we've used a number of other bulls, and it kind of gives you that depiction of where you can go with that cow. If she's consistently giving you, a 70 plus weight calf, then maybe you can go a little bit more with a growth bull and get the most out of that cow. So I think confidence in decisions like that, confidence in weaning weights and moving on to yearling weights, it's just a better picture of where your herd is going.
Were there any surprises that you remember when you started weighing more cattle or having that accurate system? Was there anything that popped up that you maybe didn't expect would?
I think the consistency in the cattle themselves is that, you look at, across the board, you got a set of calves out there and you're thinking that they look pretty consistent, or maybe you think they look really inconsistent. And then once you start weighing them, you just get that better picture of, okay, you've got a little different frame size maybe, and the weight's there or the weight's not. And the feeding program, I think that is probably one of the bigger benefits, because like I said, we warm up our own cattle, we background them, and you think, crops are not necessarily consistent across the board. One year you might have a hay crop that has really good protein, and the next year you don't. So when you're feeding those cattle that same ration and you're not getting the same results, you don't necessarily know that unless you're weighing your cattle. It's just like, I'm using the same ration, what's going on? So it prompts other things like, getting some testing done on your feed and knowing what you're lacking. Heifer weights going into, their first breeding, making sure that they're weighing where they should. And so you can adjust your feed program if it's not, or maybe they're weighing, too much and you need to put them out on pasture. It just takes the guessing game out of it a little bit more. Like I said, you don't have to weigh your cattle all the time, but it's there so you can. And the funny thing about it is very seldom do we run cattle through our chute that somebody doesn't say, hey, go get the scale head, just because you can. It's an easy thing to do.
Absolutely. Well, and like you said earlier, it increases that confidence in decision making when you have that data, which anytime we're collecting data, that's what it does, or it can do if we use it. Are horn flies stressing your cattle? Make fly control one and done with Alticid IGR XRB. Alticid IGR XRB delivers season-long hornfly control from a single application bolus, providing up to 195 days of relief, regardless of mineral consumption or location. It breaks the hornfly life cycle with no impact on beneficial insects, giving you flexible, consistent control. Learn more at cargillanimalnutrition.com/Alticid bolus, and that link will be in the description. So with what you were touching on with, you said weighing cattle and your backgrounding, so you're tracking your rate of gain or that average daily gain, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so how often are you weighing in your on the backgrounding side of your operation?
So we do the normal. Once we wean, we're weighing when we bring them through for boosters. We bangs vaccinate the heifers, so we're weighing when they come across that time. And I just, honestly, if we have a need to run them through, we just go ahead and put the scale head up and collect those weights. We ultrasound our bulls, so we obviously grab a weight for the ultrascan technician and the yearling weights. We do sell a few, I'm not going to call them show steers, I'm going to call them 4-H and FFA steers. And so we do kind of track that as well and bring those cattle across the scales. As we've started doing a little bit more of the feeding for the meat processor, we try to run those cattle across, 30, 45 days just to see where we're at.
So then are you also using these weights in your record keeping to kind of determine if there are any cows that are consistently producing top calves, average calves, or just poor performers that aren't making any money?
Absolutely. That's one of the things at weaning time, because, in the purebred business, you have a tendency to get some big old mamas, and they've got to pull their weight as well. So absolutely, we do look at, we look at birth weights as well. You like that cow that produces that nice big calf, but we don't necessarily want them to start out at that top 100 pounds either. On the same side, the calving ease has kind of thrown us a loop on the Red Angus side. And, you can have a calf that's too small. Either way, too big or too small, they got to get up and get moving. A small calf has a tendency to not have, the energy, and a big calf tends to not have that energy. So,
well, especially if you're in the Northwest, those calves have to be able to get up and have that energy. I mean, even if they're going into a barn. Yeah.
Yep. They got to get up and get to moving, not freeze to the ground. Those weights are important on that end. And of course, at weaning time, we preg check at the same time we wean. We wean the second weekend of August. It's just our time frame. And we make sure and pull a weight on those cows as well as the weaning weights on those calves. And we use the MPPA to kind of see where those cows are and if they're pulling their weight, and using that for some culling decisions. Over time, we have become shortening up our calving window and some of those things, a real consistent group of calves. Like I said, my daughter-in-law has a set of commercial cows, and she uses it right along with the way we do, and has been able to track some wonderful progress in the herd that she put together. And she sells those calves in the fall, typically October time. And so she's able to monitor what those calves do after they go in the feedlot before they go to the sale, and know what those cows are producing. And she's really honed in on a great set of cows. It's just a tool that it doesn't matter whether you're seed stock operator, commercial operator. It's very valuable in that decision making of what cows stay on the place, what progeny can build your herd, and what goes down the road because they're just not doing the job.
All of that is incredibly valuable. I also want to talk about dosage for any treatments of cattle. Why does weight matter when we're talking about animal health and treating those calves or cows?
Well, we all know that pharmaceuticals are costly. They're really costly if they're not effective. And if you are, again, guessing at that weight and guessing the dosage for that animal, you may be overdosing, giving them more than they should, which can in some ways affect how they feel. And so the overdosage is a waste of money in that, and kind of sets the calf back. If you're not giving them enough, that vaccine is not going to be very effective. And so you've just thrown away, how many ever cc of, and not getting the response you want out of that treatment.
I grew up having access to a scale where we knew what cattle weighed. We can run them through and treat them that way. But then if they were out on pasture, you can't really necessarily run them on a scale if you have to dart them or rope and doctor them, however you're doing it. But at least you have a closer guess if you have previous weights to go off of.
You've got that previous weight and kind of know where you're at and what their typical gain is. You can put those numbers together and figure out your dosage a little bit better.
Yeah. And so my husband and I, on our place, we don't have a scale yet. We talk about it a lot. It's on the list of things to get. But it almost bothers me because I'm so used to I grew up having that information. And one summer when I worked at the vet clinic, obviously we weighed before we treated to make sure we were accurate dosing there. So now not having it, it's like, oh, that's kind of tough. If we sold off the cow, we could be like, okay, here's where calves of this similar size averaged weight at the barn, but that doesn't mean it's accurate for that individual animal.
Right. The one place we do not have a set of scales, but it is on the list of things to do, is under our calf chute, which is a challenge. We have a calf table, and we brand on the left side. My daughter-in-law brands on the right side. It's trying to figure out how to make that work to have a set of scales there that we can put those calf tables on and get a weight at branding, which we brand the first part of March. So those calves are anywhere from 1 to 2 months old, because after that they do go out on the pasture and we don't bring them back in again until weaning. So it would be very advantageous for us to have that branding weight to kind of see where they're at that 1 and 2 month mark.
Yeah, for sure. So I kind of want to go back to the backgrounding and feeding side of your operation. Are you using these weights to group cattle into specific pens or change how you're feeding them, different rations, anything like that?
Definitely. Our operation isn't so big that we separate, like, we don't necessarily separate those bulls that we have on feed, but it does allow us to make some decisions after we've done our first cut of what's going to stay in our bullpen that's for sale. We start going, yeah, he's not making the cut, things like that. The fat cattle, it can move them to a different pen if we've got maybe a group that is getting a little different ration, then we can do some splitting up there. But it definitely changes the feed makeup. James is able to go, okay, we need to do something different with this ration, or maybe we're into a stack of hay that we didn't have testing done on, and maybe, it kind of prompts us to go, we probably need to figure out the content of this hay, or maybe we need to move to a different stack. So it definitely makes some informed decisions at that point.
Absolutely. I understand what you were saying with, as you go through and make cuts on the bulls for which ones do and don't make it. There's definitely several of those that happen on seed stock operations as bulls grow and develop. So that makes sense. So one part of, if we're talking about advantages of weighing or how having a scale fit into an operation, we haven't talked about marketing and selling cattle. How does having a scale, or why is having a scale advantageous on the marketing side for producers?
Well, as I said, pounds matter. It doesn't matter whether you're, selling seed stock or fat cattle or, feeders. To know what you have and where you can go with that animal. So again, that confidence when you have a bull buyer, heifer buyer, and they're looking at those weights. And of course, a lot of where they put their focus probably is where they sell their cattle, or at what point they sell their cattle. So you get some people that weaning weight means a lot. They want that calf. And so you'll get questions, how do you know that this bull is this weaning weight? And it's kind of probably 50% of the people that we do private treaty primarily. And so probably 50% of the people that come, we end up over at the chute showing them our weight system. Or if it's somebody that is looking, to retain heifers, or, or birth weight means a lot to them, we'll end up in the barn and showing them our system that we use for weighing calves. I mean, I think that goes a long ways of, hey, they really do have a scale. They really do know what these animals weigh at that time. So on that side of it, again, the confidence of this is how we operate, and the confidence of the buyer going, oh, this is really what they do. On the feeding side, like I said, we feed out some of our own, and so knowing, I mean, you need to have a finished product when they go to butcher, and so it gives you that knowing where your animals are weight wise, and we sell to people that they want to know that the animal's been taken care of. They want to know that they've been fed right. And so you want to give them the best product possible. And so you use those weights just to determine at what point they're a finished product.
One thing I think of from my perspective is not having a scale. It's always a surprise at the sale barn. We know about what they weigh, what historically we have those numbers, and we're small enough where we can go to the barn beforehand and see, which calves are specifically in which weight groups, etc. But I always think it'd be nice to not be such a surprise, or, we have to bring calves home for that first round of weaning shots anyways. So if we could take weights then, I think it would be valuable.
Well, and I really did fail to mention that part with Brian and Charlie. When they take those calves to the sale, they know what their average is. They sell the same time every year. They've watched their, based on genetic decisions, the increase in weight there, and they aren't surprised. I mean, obviously they understand, we don't have to go a long ways to go to the sale yard. They're typically only going about, 30, 40 miles, but there definitely is a shrink. They understand that part, but still, I guess the surprise part is that they go through that sale barn and they're weighing what they anticipated. And so, moving up to that point where they're ready to go to the sale barn, they're monitoring those weights and making sure they're in that range where they want them as well.
Absolutely. Now, Dawn, if someone out there listening does not have a scale and they're kind of tiptoeing back and forth over the line of should I get one, should I not get one, what would you tell them?
Well, number one, I appreciate people that have taken a lot of time to think over what they want. A good scale is an investment. And I talk to customers all the time about it. It is an investment, and it's going to change how you operate from there on out. So I guess usually when somebody calls in and says, I know I want a scale, I'm just not really sure what I should do. It really depends on the operation. I mean, where you want to weigh, how often you want to weigh. And I think that's kind of a sticky point for some people is like, well, I want to weigh, but I have a portable situation. We have 3 different pastures, or we have 3 different places. Nothing seems to be in a stationary place. So what do I do? So then we start talking about platform scales that can go in an alleyway that are portable, or maybe they want to share with a neighbor to mitigate the cost a little bit. Especially for those people that it's like, I'm just going to weigh every once in a while. I'm not sure I want to spend the money to do that. So it's like, well, you've got some options here. So we start talking about where they want to weigh and what the best option is for that. So we've got platform scales that maybe they are going to be stationary. It's just that you're not in a situation to put your chute on concrete and anchor your chute and load bars down that way. So the very popular system that we have is a platform scale. Or for that person that it's like, well, I do everything in the chute, and that's the way we're set up. We do everything in the chute, so that is where we have our scales. We have a set of scales under our silencer, and they're anchored on concrete, and that's where we're working that animal, looking at dosages and things like that. So that's where we have our scale. It's great to talk through with a customer what their goals are and what's going to work best for them. But there's options. I think that's the thing that some people don't understand, is that there are options, and we can put something together that's going to work for you.
Okay. Well, Dawn, if there is one thing you want listeners to take away from this conversation, what is that?
I would say that when you know your weight, you can control the outcome and not the buyer. You can control how you're feeding your animals, have a little bit more informed decisions on breeding decisions. And a scale system will be very beneficial. It's not a scary thing. There's options of how we can set that up for you. And a lot of it is just calling in and talking about those and being more comfortable in your decision of what's going to work for your operation. There's not a one surefire answer for everybody. So that's the reason we like them to call in and discuss what their operation setup is and what their goals are. Like I said, a scale system is an investment. It's going to have a profound effect on your operation and how you move forward. So don't let it be scary. Just call in and talk through it, and we'll help you find the best system for your operation.
Well, awesome. And for those of you who are listening today, you can learn more at CattleScales.com, and you can learn more about who the CattleScales team is. Little hint, it's a bunch of ranchers just like you too. So you can learn more right there. That link will be in the description and show notes for those of you listening today. Dawn, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
All right, folks, remember the best way to support this podcast and all your other favorite podcasts is to leave a rating or review, and better yet, share it with a friend who's going to find this information valuable. Because believe it or not, podcasts still grow best by word of mouth. With that, happy ranching.